The transport pod's engines hummed their final note as it touched down on the unfamiliar soil of Earth. Inside, Nsari pressed her pale purple fingers against the viewport, her dark curls falling across her face as she peered at the alien landscape. Beside her, Telexa sat rigid, her jaw clenched with the same stubborn defiance that had gotten them both exiled from Corella Prime. Cultural correction, Nsari muttered, the Council's words still bitter on her tongue. As if there's something wrong with us. Telexa's violet eyes flashed. There's nothing wrong with choosing our own path instead of becoming breeding stock for their genetic programs. The pod's door hissed open, revealing a figure waiting on the platform. Eli Morgan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, brown hair tousled by the earth breeze, wearing what humans called a welcoming smile. To the Corellan women, it looked like a predator baring its teeth. Welcome to Earth, Eli said, stepping forward with his hand extended. I'm Eli, your cultural liaison. Nsari instinctively stepped back, her body coiling as if preparing for combat. Physical contact was reserved for combat or mating among her people, nothing casual, nothing gentle. When Eli's fingertips barely brushed hers in what he intended as a handshake, she jerked away as if burned. Apologies, she said stiffly. Corellan do not touch. Eli's expression softened with understanding rather than offense, which confused both women further. On Corella, reactions were always calculated, always about hierarchy and control. This human's genuine concern seemed impossible. Of course, he said, dropping his hand naturally. I should have researched your customs better. Would you prefer I maintain distance? Telexa studied him suspiciously. His tone held no mockery, no dominance display. When she didn't answer, he simply nodded and gestured toward a vehicle. Your quarters are prepared. I thought we'd take the scenic route so you can acclimate gradually. As they traveled through the human settlement, Nsari and Telexa exchanged glances. Children played in yards without supervision. Adults touched each other freely, holding hands, embracing, casual contact that would be scandalous on their homeworld. These humans, Telexa whispered in their native tongue, they're either the most trusting species in the galaxy, or the most naive. Nsari watched Eli's reflection in the vehicle's window, noting how his eyes softened when he spoke about the home he'd prepared for them. Something about his gentleness unsettled her more than any warrior's blade ever had. Their exile was just beginning, but already, Earth was proving more dangerous than they'd expected, not to their bodies, but to the walls they'd built around their hearts. 3 weeks had passed since their arrival, and Nsari found herself watching Eli from across the kitchen as he prepared what humans called breakfast. His movements were unhurried, methodical, nothing like the efficiency-obsessed rituals of Corella. When he hummed softly while cooking, she tilted her head, puzzled by the sound. Is that a territorial display? Telexa asked, joining her sister by the window. I don't think so, Nsari murmured. He does it when he's content. The concept of expressing joy through sound without purpose was foreign to them. On Corella, every action served the collective, every emotion was controlled for the greater good. Yet here was Eli, humming simply because he felt like it. Good morning, Eli called softly, not turning around. He'd learned not to startle them with sudden movements. I made extra coffee if you'd like to try it. Initially, both women had refused human food, surviving on the nutritional supplements they'd brought. But hunger had a way of breaking down barriers, and curiosity had begun to win over suspicion. Nsari approached the counter cautiously. What does coffee accomplish? Eli's lips curved, not the threatening display they'd first mistaken it for, but something warmer. It makes mornings more bearable. Sometimes pleasure doesn't need a purpose. The idea was revolutionary. On Corella, pleasure was earned through service, rationed like any other resource. As Nsari sipped the bitter liquid, she felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening she couldn't name. That evening, a thunderstorm rolled across the valley. The first crack of thunder sent both women into defensive positions, backs pressed against the walls, eyes scanning for threats. On their homeworld, storms meant acid rain and electrical hazards. Eli found them huddled in the hallway, trembling despite their proud postures. "It's just water," he said gently, settling on the floor nearby without crowding them. "Earth storms are mostly harmless here." As lightning illuminated the windows, Telexa flinched. Without thinking, Eli reached out, then caught himself, hand freezing midair. "May I?" he asked softly. The question stunned them. Permission for touch. The concept was alien yet oddly comforting. After a moment's hesitation, Telexa nodded. Eli's hand settled warm and steady on her shoulder. No aggression, no demand for submission, just presence. When Sari saw her sister's breathing slow, she found herself leaning closer. "Your people," Sari whispered, "do you always ask before touching?" "When it matters," Eli replied. "Touch should be a gift, not a taking." As the storm raged outside, something fundamental shifted between them. For the first time since arriving, the Corellan women began to understand that strength and gentleness weren't mutually exclusive. 2 months into their exile, routines had formed like gentle currents shaping stone. Mornings began with Eli's humming and coffee, evenings ended with what he called decompression time, moments of quiet conversation that would have been unthinkable on Corella. "Tell me about your world," Eli said one night as they sat on the roof, legs dangling over the edge. Above them, Earth's single moon cast silver light across the valley. "It's efficient," Telexa replied, surprising herself by continuing. "Everything serves the collective. Our cities are perfect geometric forms, our lives mapped from birth to death." "Sounds lonely," Eli observed without judgment. Nsari's laugh was bitter. "Loneliness is selfish. Individual wants weaken the whole." "Who taught you that?" The simple question hung in the air. Neither woman had ever considered that their fundamental beliefs might be taught rather than universal truths. "The council," Nsari finally admitted. "The matriarchs. Everyone." "And what do you think?" Eli asked, turning to face them fully. "Not what you were taught. What do you feel?" The word "feel" still made both women uncomfortable, but here in the darkness, with stars reflecting in Eli's eyes, honesty felt safer. "I think." Telexa began slowly, "I think maybe we were lied to." It was the first time either had voiced doubt about their upbringing. Eli didn't celebrate their revelation or push for more. He simply nodded and pointed to a constellation. "That's Cassiopeia. Humans tell stories about the patterns we see." As he spoke, his hand moved to illustrate the constellation's shape, accidentally brushing Sari's fingers. She didn't pull away this time. The touch was warm, gentle, everything Corellan contact was not. "On Corella," she whispered, "we don't have stories. Only reports. Only facts. Stories help us understand feelings," Eli explained, his thumb tracing across her knuckles in a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "They make us human." "What do they make us?" Telexa asked, shifting closer until their shoulders touched. Eli looked between them, these beautiful, damaged women who'd been taught that their hearts were weaknesses to overcome. His own heart, scarred by past betrayals, recognized their careful courage. "They make you free," he said softly. Later, as they climbed down from the roof, Telexa stumbled on the ladder. Eli's arms came around her waist to steady her, and for a moment, they froze, bodies pressed together, breathing synchronized. "Thank you," she breathed, not stepping away. When Sari saw them, she felt something unfamiliar twist in her stomach. Not the jealousy she'd expected, but something warmer, happiness for her sister, and desire for the same gentle strength directed at her. That night, all three lay awake in their separate rooms, thinking about touch and choice and the dangerous freedom of wanting something just for themselves. The breakthrough came during Sari's fever. What should have been a minor human illness hit her Corellan physiology hard, leaving her delirious and burning with heat. Eli spent 3 days at her bedside, cooling her skin with damp cloths and speaking in soothing tones when nightmares made her cry out. "Why?" she whispered during a lucid moment, catching his wrist as he reached for the water glass. Why care for me? Eli's eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. Because you matter. Not for what you can do or provide, but because you're you. The concept was so alien that Ansari began to cry, the first tears she'd shed since childhood. Eli didn't tell her to stop or ask for explanations. He simply held her hand while she wept for a lifetime of believing she was valuable only for her genetic contributions. When the fever finally broke, Ansari found Telexa curled in the chair beside her bed, having refused to leave her sister's side. Eli had fallen asleep on the floor, one hand still resting protectively near her ankle. He didn't leave, Telexa whispered. 3 days, and he never left. Recovery brought new awareness. Simple touches, Eli checking her temperature, helping her stand, steadying her when she wobbled, sent electricity through Ansari's skin. She watched him with new eyes, noting the gentleness in his strong hands, the patience in his tired smile. One evening, as autumn painted the trees in impossible colors, Telexa found herself alone with Eli in the kitchen. The comfortable silence they developed felt charged with new tension. Ansari was right to trust you, she said suddenly. Eli looked up from the vegetables he was chopping. Was she? You could have let the fever run its course. On Corella, weakness is eliminated, not nurtured. Telexa stepped closer, studying his face. But you fought for her like she was precious. She is precious, Eli said simply. So are you. The words hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Telexa reached out, fingers hovering just above his cheek. May I? She whispered, echoing his words from the night of the storm. His nod was barely perceptible. When her palm finally made contact with his skin, they both shuddered. The kiss that followed was tentative at first, a question more than a demand. But when Eli's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, Telexa discovered that desire wasn't the shameful weakness she'd been taught. Ansari found them like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and felt no jealousy, only a deep longing to be part of something so beautiful. When they noticed her, she didn't retreat. Is there room, she asked quietly, for one more? That night, they learned that intimacy could be gentle, that pleasure could be shared rather than taken, that 3 hearts could beat in harmony without losing their individual rhythms. In Eli's arms, between his whispered endearments and reverent touches, both women finally understood what it meant to be cherished rather than used. But their happiness was fragile, and morning brought devastating news. Earth officials had arrived with early repatriation orders. The council wanted their exiles back. The government officials sat stiffly in Eli's living room, their formal uniforms a stark contrast to the cozy space that had become home. Commander Torres, a stern woman with silver hair, spread documents across the coffee table. The Corellan Council has reconsidered your sentences, she announced. They're willing to reinstate your citizenship and status in exchange for your cooperation in future diplomatic relations. Ansari and Telexa exchanged glances. 6 months ago, this would have been everything they wanted. Return to Corella, restoration of their positions, acknowledgement that they'd been right to rebel. What's the catch? Telexa asked. No catch. Your exile has proven educational for both species. The Council values your insights into human culture. The unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. They would return as ambassadors, their experience on Earth reduced to tactical intelligence. Their newfound capacity for love would be seen as useful weakness to exploit in future negotiations. And if we refuse? Ansari's voice was carefully neutral. Commander Torres' expression hardened. Refusal means permanent exile. No return to Corella, ever. You'd be stateless, dependent on Earth's goodwill for the rest of your lives. After the officials left, the 3 sat in silence. Eli stared at his hands, clearly struggling with something. Finally, he spoke. You should go back. Both women turned to him in shock. What? This is your chance to reclaim everything. Your world, your status, your future. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his pain. I won't be the reason you lose that. Nsari stood abruptly, anger flashing in her violet eyes. Do you think so little of our judgment? Of what we've built here? I think I love you both too much to trap you, Eli replied quietly. Telexa moved to his side, taking his face in her hands. You beautiful, foolish man. Don't you understand? Corella was never home. It was just the place we were born. Home, Nsari added, settling on his other side, is where someone loves you not for what you can provide, but for who you are. The choice, when it came, was easier than they'd expected. They filed for asylum together, officially requesting permanent residency on Earth. The paperwork took months, but eventually, 3 small documents arrived that changed everything: refugee status approved. A year later, they stood in a converted barn that had become the Interspecies Cultural Center, a refuge for other exiled beings seeking new beginnings. Nsari managed the educational programs while Telexa handled counseling services. Eli continued teaching, but now his students included beings from a dozen different worlds. Any regrets? Eli asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their favorite spot on the roof. Nsari curled closer to his side while Telexa rested her head on his shoulder. About leaving a world that taught us we were valuable only for our reproductive capacity to find one where we're valued for our minds and hearts. Never. The council was right about one thing, Telexa added with a smile. Our time on Earth was educational. We learned that love isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing in the universe. As the stars emerged overhead, the same constellations Eli had first shown them, all 3 knew they'd found something worth fighting for: the radical freedom to choose their own happiness, together.